The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is an ultimately flawed but very fun base game, so it only makes sense that we'd later get DLC later down the line, in the form of Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus, which for this video I'm just going to call it Afterbirth and just combine the two into one DLC. And originally my intention was to say that Afterbirth was very flawed at launch, but ultimately got better with time, but nope, it's still quite bad. In fact, many of the problems still exist in the current DLC, and a good chunk of the problems had to be rectified in Repentance, the next DLC following this one. And to add insult to injury, there was a free mod that was basically way better in almost every way. Although that later got integrated into Repentance. Although it's kind of a shame, Afterbirth does have some good things that I want to talk about, but it's also got a lot of bad things that I wonder, did they even test this? Did they play test this at all? I mean, really. So with that, let's dive right into the topic of the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth expansion. Let's start this off by being positive, because by the end, I'm not going to be positive in the slightest. Let's talk about the new items, and yeah, there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are actually very interesting and creative design-wise. It's quite clear the team definitely did get a lot more creative with these items because, well, a lot of the Isaac items in the base game are very simple, but that's fine. You really didn't need to have this complicated design. But it's definitely clear they got a lot more weird and experimental with the newer design of the items. Now granted, a lot of them are kind of just mediocre, and in the case of the fly items, you wonder, yeah, these are a bit too niche for their own good. But be it trinkets, active items, passive items, they definitely got a lot more interesting with their design philosophy. And even some items that actually break the philosophy of the game, like the backpack item. My only complaint is that this weirdly does not work with the Forgotten, because they share the exact same button, and if you accidentally take this without knowing it, congratulations, idiot, you have just wasted 15 cents. But it's still really cool that you can actually have two active items at the same time. While many of the items are not great, I definitely can appreciate the fact that they definitely took risk and got a lot more creative and experimental. I am much more happy with a mediocre but potentially powerful item that's more interesting than just a boring upgrade item, like, say, just more damage. Although, don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of those in this expansion, just they sometimes have a gimmick slapped onto them. Probably one of the best new additions added at Afterbirth Plus was mod support, because trust me, you're gonna want mods, more specifically the item descriptions mod, because seriously, why did it take them this long to actually implement it into the base game? And it's still not as good as the mod. All jokes aside though, this is a necessary mod, and the first time you actually get mods unlocked, you should download this. Which I have to say, Isaac is very generous with its mod support. You can basically install any mod you want, barring you beat the first boss. And by the first boss, I mean the leg. Once you've done that, you can cheat as much as you want and the game will not bat an eye. I honestly love this, and it's great that Edmund McMillan does not punish modders, unlike certain people, Todd Howard. But excuse me getting my achievements disabled because I want to fix your broken game, Todd. And trust me, you're going to need a couple of mods to particularly make this DLC a lot more bearable because, yeah, there's just a lot of aspects that can, funnily enough, be fixed with mods.
You can also install Harney mods if you like. No one's going to stop you.
Well, that's a bit irrelevant, but true and real. The Sacrifice Room's also got a complete rework, and I have to say, wow, this is so much better than the original. My only real complaint is the fact that the Angel Rooms are kind of janky, and they also have their own fair share of problems, which we'll get into a bit later, hopefully. But overall, they're much better, offer much better rewards, and you oftentimes get a lot more bang for your buck. Plus, you can actually summon the angels to get to Mega Satan. Although, the reward is kinda and you're only really doing it for completion mark purposes.
Whoa! This is worthless.
It's less than worthless.
But still, the fact that this is another way to actually get there without having to rely on pure luck is actually a nice change. Another thing is this new UI you've probably seen on my screen. This actually tells you what your exact stats are instead of just having this vague piece of paper on the menu screen. Very nice change, I quite like it. The only issue I had with it was because of the angel room, kind of how that works. Essentially, angel rooms are not their own thing, they're kind of replacing devil deals, meaning if you had a 100% chance to get an angel room, you still would not get an angel room if your devil chance was too low. Is that confusing and unintuitive? Yes, very, and I think they changed this later. But while we're on the topic of the sacrifice rooms, you can actually unlock the Lost a lot easier now. In the base game, the Lost was very complicated and hard to unlock, and even though I put a lot of hours into the base Isaac game, I could not unlock the Lost. Hell, even with Afterbirth Plus, I still could not unlock the Lost legitimately and had to use a mod. But still, he's playable now, and he's got some nice quality of life updates as well. Such as the Holy Mantle and the D4, which are anti-synergy with one another, and yeah, they didn't test this very much. Oh wait, there I go slipping, not being positive again, my bad. While I do love the D4, all hail the D4 and its mighty RNG power, it is kind of the worst item for the Lost because you get none of the good benefits like getting extra health, and oftentimes the D4 can equally screw you over. I get what they were going for with it, but it just kinda doesn't work. Even with a mod that makes the Holy Mantle effect base effect and not an item, it's still kinda mediocre. You're very dependent on RNG, and oftentimes you will get screwed over if you're not careful, and yeah, sometimes this thing can still reroll anyway, so you can't rely on it, and that's a huge problem. But speaking of quality of life, a lot of other characters actually got some quality of life improvements. Except for Isaac and the Blue Baby, for some reason. He would actually get a buff in Repentance. I don't know why he didn't get a buff here. Nothing major, just mostly quality of life things. Samson gets an item that gives him more hearts. Lazarus gets a free item that lets him bleed more, as the game describes it, which basically just gives him more range and a trail of bloody tears. I did not like Lazarus before, and this kind of does make him a lot better. And very notably, Eve gets a razor, which lets her damage herself, and actually makes her less clunky of a character, because now you can activate the effect a lot easier. And Cain gets the paperclip, which lets him open chests easier. This is all nice quality of life changes on top of the Lost getting the Holy Mantle, which makes him, funny enough, actually playable. Shops also get a new restock feature, and this is also a thing for the item rooms, because occasionally they'll spawn in item rooms, and this basically lets you restock the shop or swap items in the treasure rooms. And this is a great feature. There's a lot of times where I end up stuck with a ton of money, not able to use it, and I kind of just throw it in the donation machine, because what else am I going to do with it? They also add new floor types. They're kind of just reskins of old existing floors, but they're still pretty cool. Except for the middle one. I have a lot of problems with the middle one. But the Burning Basement and the Sacred Womb, they're actually pretty nice and actually add a lot of variety to the gameplay, even if it's just cosmetic, really. But probably the best thing I think this DLC adds is new tracks, and they're all kind of really good in their own right. I don't think there's a single track that I outright hate. Even for the bosses I do hate, which yeah, we'll get into, but I want to stay positive here, they at least have some really good tracks. Very different from base games Isaac's music, which was much more slow, methodical, and much more ambient. These are much more heavy rock and roll and kind of more pumping. You can really get your blood pumping to these songs, and honestly, they're actually quite good. They don't actually stand out too much, despite the fact that they are very different from the base game, and even have some of the main theme motifs in there. So that's really cool. Also, more notable good additions include new pills, and frankly, I am just glad that none of them are as bad as Are You a Wizard? There is Retrovision, which is just okay. It blurs your screen a little bit, but nothing too bad, thankfully. But also some cool new pills, like one makes you smaller and one makes you larger. Despite the fact that one makes you smaller actually does decrease your hitbox, one makes you larger does not increase your hitbox, and is purely cosmetic only. Although if you get big enough, you can stomp rocks. So that's a cool, neat little thing. How big can Isaac get? Yes. How small can Isaac get? I don't know, I didn't get that far. But I imagine pretty small. Another thing is new transformations. They aren't much, really, but they do add a lot to the balancing, making certain items that were previously not very useful into slightly more useful items. That said, some of these are incredibly rare, like Spider Baby, Bob, and oh crap. I legitimately have never gotten these three, but the one that benefits the most from this is book items, and most notably the library, which got a huge buff with the form of Bookworm. A very simple transformation that just simply gives you an extra shot once in a while, which I mean, 2020 is quite literally one of the best items in the game, and a 2020 that is free and also kind of random is still pretty good as it turns out. The mother items notably also get Yes Mother transformation, which is kind of okay. I've never really been able to make use of it. And something relatively small and very minute is this mirror thing that appears in later floors. It lets you change your appearance, and basically it's kind of useless outside of bombing it for an extra pill, which is also sometimes not really worth it, but if you have extra bombs and you wanna try your luck, it can be worth it. But probably the biggest and one I actually forgot about for quite a bit was the fact that items now charge after every wave of boss rush. And this includes the challenge rooms as well. It isn't much, but if you have a very expensive item, that can suddenly make these rooms so much better and suddenly feel a lot less bad. It's such a small change, but it's such a nice one that I have to just appreciate it. For everything this DLC does wrong, it does a lot of things right, it seems like. Just kind of a shame the bad just really overshadows the good. Now to end on this positivity, I'm going to talk about something that's kinda mid. The quote-unquote puzzles, which are just buttons. You push the button and then the spikes stop, and that's it. You can pretty much completely and utterly avoid this with a flying character like Azazel. To be honest, I'm kinda mixed on these, and I don't know if I like them or just kinda, yeah. They're just kinda meh, in my opinion. I mean, it could work, but it just kinda, I don't hate them, I don't like them, they're just kind of somewhere in the middle. Same goes for a lot of the new enemies, they're just kinda mediocre. There are some that I think are fine, but they're just kinda Most of them just kind of are just reskins of the original enemies with some kind of gimmick. With the exception of the flooded caves, which I'm gonna get into in its own little section, because I really do not like this section because it's so unbalanced and completely destroys Isaac's balance philosophy. Alright, positivity's over. Pack it up and leave. We're now time to talk about the negative parts of the DLC. Let's start with a simple one, that being the bosses. Most of them suck. I mean, they're kind of okay-ish. The new Han, for instance, is kind of a joke compared to the original. The original was hard because he was a first-floor boss. This guy is just kind of an easy joke to deal with. I absolutely despise the corn poop boss because, well, projectile spam is fun! And many others just kind of The main exception to this is Bighorn and Littlehorn. I actually quite like these bosses. They have a very interesting gimmick, and oftentimes it's a bit fun to play a little mini-game with them by throwing their bombs back at them. They're not particularly hard, but also they have a fun gimmick, and that's actually interesting to play against. And on the contrary, we have Cancer, aka Ragman. Now, for some reason, I don't see anyone talking about this, but I actually found a little thing on the official Steam page artwork. And lo and behold, you can see a lot of base game enemies, and oh, what's this? Ragman! Spider coming out of his head, bandaged, purple glow. Yeah, there's no mistaking this, it's him. And this is official art, mind you, so it implies that he might have been a base game enemy at one point. And I think it's for a good reason that they did not include him, because he sucks!
I believe we call this a skill issue on your part.
A skill issue does not excuse bad game design.
I never said it did, you moron.
No way, you little... Anyways, Ragman is quite terrible for, myriad of reasons. Number one, he summons little spider enemies. And spiders in this game are a pain in the ass to deal with because their AI is very weird. And secondly, he can resummon these enemies, meaning you've gotta either deal with his minions or you gotta prioritize Ragman. And he also has homing projectiles, so you can't keep your distance because those homing projectiles can and will lock onto you if you're not careful. You can hit his head, and that will technically damage both him and the spider that would pop out, but this is also kind of risky, and also he has a lot of health, and oh, and by the way, he's a floor 1 boss. I would like to issue a formal apology to the Haunt. He is no longer the worst floor 1 boss in this game. That honor belongs to Ragman! There was also kind of a change to level generation, and some of this is kind of okay. Namely, these half rooms. Now, they don't sound too bad until you realize that these can be boss rooms and you can get something like, oh, I don't know, Pestilence, which you know is a boss balanced around the fact that you have space to actually hit him. Oh, no. You can get screwed over pretty easily by this level generation. And the half rooms aren't even interesting as game design, they're just kind of at best and just why at worst. It's quite clear that they did not really playtest this very much, if at all, because this is very annoying to deal with. Not to mention completely and utterly messes with the flow of secret rooms if you don't know about their existence. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've never had a secret room spawn next to these things, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, but if you don't know that initially, guess what? You're gonna be annoyed, and you're gonna waste a lot of bombs, which, depending on the run, can be insanely valuable. You couple this with some annoying enemies and level generation sometimes really just hating you in particular that day, and you got a recipe for some very frustrating games. And there's also new characters, and they're kind of mediocre. 4 of them you can unlock very easily, and 1 of them you have to really grind for. And they can be summed up as really powerful, or just kind of mediocre, or really bad in one of them's case. The main exception is Lilith, who is actually insanely overpowered, and she's really easy to get on top of that. She has a little familiar, but she can't shoot. Okay, that seems pretty balanced. But she also has Box of Friends, which lets her duplicate her familiars. Okay, that sounds really powerful. But she also has Contraception, which means every 15 hearts worth of damage she takes, and this includes half hearts, she gets a free familiar, and she can do this twice. That's pretty powerful. Oh, and the little familiar also copies your tears, meaning you don't lose out on any benefit. Yeah, Lilith is pretty insane. The only downside is that every time I try to mod her with a different skin, she just breaks. Purely cosmetic, but I don't know why. Just for some reason, she just does not work. Every other character I've tried to get a skin for and change, which, yeah, you'll probably notice that I've gotten some skins in this video. Everyone but Lilith worked just fine. But then you had a character I was actually really excited to unlock, Apollyon. Now his gimmick sounds really interesting. He has the Void, and the Void consumes all. And the Void can consume active and passive items. And the active items he can reactivate whenever he activates the Void, meaning you can have a super button. And this super button is really powerful, is what I would say if I was a liar. And the stats up themselves are also kind of bad from the passives. Oftentimes you're just better off just taking the passive anyway, and that's kind of I thought Apollyon was going to be better Isaac, but he ended up being worse Isaac, not to mention having some pretty stats. One I actually ended up really liking was Forgotten. He's a pain in the ass to unlock though because of this complicated setup you have to go through. And believe me, even with cheating, I was at the mercy of RNG, which is honestly just my biggest problem with Forgotten because he's a pain in the ass to unlock. Well worth it though because his gimmick's actually insanely fun, as he's actually a melee character. I can also swap between him and the Soul. The Soul is chained to the Forgotten but can basically act as a normal character and can shoot properly. And Forgotten is really weird because you'd think, oh, this shouldn't work, should it? Well, no, actually, it does work, you idiot. How dare you assume this doesn't work? Because a lot of items that you would think just straight up wouldn't work actually do work in the weirdest way possible. It's clear someone put a lot of forethought into how a lot of these items would pair with a melee character, which is kind of crazy, but not really unexpected. They did make some changes to items, such as the Steam sale actually being additive instead of multiplicative, which essentially just means it won't half itself, it'll essentially just go to 100%. But still, he's kind of an awesome character that realistically could have just been his own thing without the Soul, but adding on to the Soul is actually really cool. Although before we get into the major stuff, which we're gonna get into after intermission time, we're gonna need to talk about the Flooded Caves, more specifically their enemies. Yeah, the enemies kind of explode with projectiles on death, and this is, quite bad. Because this is the middle floor, you're kind of not expecting enemies to be much harder and spam projectiles, which, the Flooded Caves basically just throws out the window. Isaac, by this point, has a very good cadence when it comes to difficulty. With the lower you go, the more enemies get gimmicks, the more enemies get stronger, and the more enemies will find a way to screw you over. Sure, something like the exploding leeches in Shoal are very, annoying, but at this point, you probably should expect it by this point. It's not as bad, because by this point, you should expect the game to throw a lot more things that are not fair at your face. This is the second area of the game, and yet it's kind of throwing out that balance philosophy. And before you say anything, Mimo, I know, skill issue, but that's not an excuse for bad design! Either way, though, I think we need a break. So, let's cue intermission time, and I'll see you all on the other side. Oh hi, it's intermission time. You know what that means, and for once I actually do. Use this time to go get a snack, use the toilet, or possibly some other third thing that I'm just not thinking of right this second. No, really, I'll still be here when you get back. But for those of you who stuck around and want to help support the video, you can do that by liking, commenting, and other things like typing, which I don't fully understand, but YouTube likes it, so if you want to help me, you can do that. But just know that enjoying the video is more than enough for me, really. But it does help get this video out to other people, but again, not necessary. And now we return to your regularly scheduled programming. Up until this point, I have failed to address a very large gray elephant in the room, but we'll get to him later. As for now, I want to be positive, because I have actually something positive to say about what I'm going to call the trio, and that being Hush. Hush is actually really well designed. I am actually kind of surprised. When you compare him to the other two members of the trio, he is probably the best designed, has the best gameplay mechanics, and is overall actually kind of fun. It's just kind of a shame he's hampered by the same mechanic that the other members of the trio are basically plagued by. I am talking about boss armor, which basically means that these bosses will scale to your damage. Now that does not sound too bad until you realize that this fundamentally does not work with Isaac's basic game design. Now granted, it's fine to have hard bosses. In fact, I think a challenge is always welcome when it's balanced. You see, that's the thing about challenges. They have to actually be balanced. They have to feel like you have a fighting chance. Because if you just throw random bullshit go at the player and expect them to think, oh man, this is some great game design, they're not gonna like it. Gee, I wonder if this is foreshadowing to anything.
That would imply that you planned ahead and actually have good structure.
Okay, that's just mean, but actually quite true in my case. But still, out of the trio, Hush actually has some really good mechanics. And overall, he feels balanced. In fact, had it not been for boss armor, I think Hush low-key would have been one of the best bosses in all of Isaac, period. He's also not even that hard to get to, and you have to actively go looking for him. Because he only spawns if you beat the womb in under 30 minutes, similar to Boss Rush. It gives you a few extra items and a few ways to use your keys, a shop, and a couple treasure rooms with a couple different options. Like, wow! Out of all of these, Hush is probably the best designed out of all of them. He feels like an actual super boss, with a ton of forethought and design put into him. Absolute fantastic boss design. And then they immediately throw all this great design out for Ultra Greed and Delirium. But after you beat Hush, you unlock a new area, the Void. And it's there you get to face another super boss, Delirium, or as I'm going to refer to him as, Dell Computers, because I've never had a good experience with a Dell computer. And Dell, as I'm going to refer to him for short, is kind of the poster child of really cool idea executed extremely poorly and a giant waste of a perfectly good design philosophy. But before you can even get to Dell Computers, you first need to get lucky, or at least beat Hush, because I believe it's guaranteed you can actually get to the Void via Hush's room, which is not good design, because again, Hush is a very long fight, so that's a problem. But also, he can occasionally spawn after you beat a major boss. And by this, I mean he can either spawn after you beat Blue Baby, or the Lamb, or possibly also Mega Satan, but this is pure chance. There's also a small chance that he spawns after It Lives, and let me just say, putting it smack dab in the middle is kind of dickish, because I have accidentally walked into it, and yeah, this is just kind of very bad design strike 1. Bad design strike 2 is the Void. It's incredibly lazy. It's just a bunch of rooms stitched together from other floors. Now, it'd be kind of cool if there was like little hints of like Delirium, like in like cracks, for instance. Like cracks in the walls, you can see like Delirium watching you. Which would make sense, because in his boss fight, he actually shows you flashbacks, kind of. So it makes sense, but no, it's just the same floors. And there's also multiple boss rooms, which, yeah, this basically just means you're either gonna get Delirium first try, or you're gonna be searching around the Void constantly just to find Delirium. I feel like if Delirium was locked behind like a door and you actually had to scrounge around to find the key to Delirium's door, that would be much better design. Because then you'd have to actually actively go looking for Delirium. You couldn't just stumble into his door. Or, you know, some visual clarity, like, oh, I don't know, he has a visually distinct door that's hard to miss. You know, that'd be cool too. But surely Dell Computers makes up for it in his fantastic boss design. Well, yes and no. Design alone? No, I hate it. It's goofy. I can make him look incredibly stupid with just one simple edit.
I can explain.
His design is just really boring. He's just a head. I mean, the fact he can turn into other bosses is really cool, but other than that, yeah, that's not much to say about his design. Some of the Delirified bosses are really cool and have some really cool designs, but they're just existing bosses with different textures. And then there's just the fight itself, which is, oh, this is bad. Projectile spam, constantly changing forms, and occasionally the fight is either ridiculously easy because Delirium does not want to live on this planet anymore, or he has decided that you will die today. There is no in-between, and Delirium is either one of the easiest fights in the world because he just gives up or turns into a boss that has multiple hitboxes, or he turns into basically everything that counters your build. Inconsistent is the name of the game with Delirium. Oh, and did I mention the laundry list of bugs that were just never patched? Yeah, there's a lot of them. And another thing, Delirium can technically telefrag you, and that's a phrase I never thought I'd get to use outside of Team Fortress 2, so that's how you know things are bad. Essentially, if he transforms into the leg, he can stomp on you and basically transform back, thus preventing you from, well, avoiding it. So in other words, you can sometimes just take unnecessary damage because, screw you in particular. There honestly is not much worth saving in Delirium's entire gameplay. He is just bad. And not to mention, this whole thing with boss armor fundamentally warps the balance altogether. High damage characters like Samson Eve? Oh, what's that? You wanna actually have a fighting chance against Delirium? Well, I guess you're just gonna have to rework your entire playstyle to instead fit a playstyle that incorporates multiple instances of damage that are actually low enough to where boss armor will not trigger that much, and his health can be reasonable if you want a boss fight that basically lasts for a reasonable amount of time and you're not just sitting there just waiting for him to die because you just so happen to have too much damage up. Yeah, that's the problem with boss armor. It fundamentally punishes you for having too high of damage. In a roguelike, let that sink in for a moment. No, really, let that sink in.
Honestly, not even I can make fun of you for that one. You're just correct on this one, and that's a rarity for you.
You know what's bad when me and the AI are on the same page about something? Dell Computers here could be removed from the game, and the game would be objectively better for it. That said, some of the unlocks are actually pretty cool, and I love Little Delirium. It's just kind of a shame that every single time you try to fight Delirium, it's always a slog. It's also kind of a shame because I had a really good run with the Lost that basically was a Delirium Buster build, and unfortunately, I lost that footage, so now I have no proof, apart from the achievement mark I have for the Lost, that I actually did it. So that alone makes me extra salty. But now it's time for what you've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. It's time for Greed Mode. And Greed Mode, at first, I was like, hey, this is actually really fun. It's like a horde type game mode. But the more you play it, the more you start to notice its flaws. And the more you start to notice its flaws, the more you realize that that phrase at the beginning, did they test this at all, was definitely a no. No, they didn't. What is the core fundamentals and basic gameplay of Greed Mode? You push the button, you get coins, enemies pop out, you fight the enemies, you defeat the enemies, you go to the shop, you get items, you get a free item, and there's a treasure room right next to it, and all you have is this little area that you have to fight off the enemies in, and that's basically it. You repeat that for a couple floors, and then you fight the big bad boss, Ultra Greed. That's it. Now, as a whole, that doesn't sound too bad. In fact, that actually sounds quite fun, like a nice change of pace. The problem is the grind. You see, you need coins in order to unlock a certain character, that being the Keeper, which we'll get into second. And you also need it to unlock various other things like the razor, the holy mantle, Kane's paperclip, that sort of thing. If you want all of the rewards, you need to put 1,000 coins into the donation machine. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, except the only way to spawn the donation machine is beat Ultra Greed. Now, that also doesn't sound that bad, except in the base game, when you take damage from Greed or his keepers, he will basically knock a coin out of your inventory. The same actually applies to Ultra Greed, except these also heal him. So just don't take damage, lol. Simple as. Also, there's more to this mechanic than you might think. You see, the machine, like the donation machine, can jam. This is based on different characters. So you've basically got to keep track of which characters you've basically done this with, and then do this multiple times and just pray that the machine does not jam. Although, maybe you could try, say, a modded character. No, because the game will basically just say, no, don't do that, and jam the machine anyway. Remember me from a few minutes ago? Yeah, that entire philosophy was just thrown out the window for the donation machine. Cheat as much as you want, unless, of course, you're touching the donation machine, then how dare you, you filthy cheater! Oh, what's that? You're gonna try and save scum it? Well, no! We're gonna stop you from doing that, too, because Edmund McMillan hates save scumming and data miners! Actually fix the mechanic to make it fun and playable? No. Let's actually just make it harder. But surely it's worth it. Surely you get an amazing character. Maybe it's something like the Forgotten. Maybe Keeper is like the most interestingly designed character of all time. Right? Right? Well, what if I told you playing the Keeper pre-patch is like getting CBT'd, and I'm not talking about the therapy. Now, as a whole, he's deceptively simple. He has 2 hearts that aren't actually hearts, they're coin hearts, and you can only replenish them via coins. Okay, that makes sense. And he's got a triple shot. Now that sounds awesome. He sounds like an awesome glass cannon kind of character. He can only take a maximum of 2 damage, but he's got an amazing triple shot. Think of the possibilities. He must be awesome, right? Wait, well, why are his stats so low? What do you mean that he has -2 luck? What do you mean that health ups don't work on him? In fact, they're actually completely and utterly useless. Wait, what do you mean that coin hearts actually count as normal hearts pre-repentance, and getting devil deals actually will just kill him, and getting angel deals is literally impossible? Wait, you're meaning to tell me that this character is actually the worst character in the entire game, and you have to do an insane grind to unlock him? This is just plain pure evil. I have to genuinely wonder why. And this is on top of the existing problems with greed mode, mind you. The only exception to actually getting Keeper playable is one thing: the Swallowed Penny. That's it. If you get the Swallowed Penny, congratulations, you basically just made Keeper playable, and that's literally it. You basically have to get lucky to actually play the character. I'm sorry, but I'd rather hit my own hand with a hammer repeatedly, because at least then someone would probably find it funny. And then there would be some semblance of amusement, unlike the Keeper, which is just pain. And then there's the problems with greed mode. And I can basically sum it up as: don't touch the button, don't go near the sacrifice rooms, don't hit the button an extra time for that devil deal, it's not worth it. Basically only buy good items, go to the shop to get a key every once in a while, and that's about it. Every other mechanic in the shop is basically completely and utterly worthless. Which is also not really helped by the fact that Devil Deals and Angel Deals technically got a lot worse. Angel Deals got a lot worse because basically now you're not guaranteed to get an item that's actually worth a damn. The pool got infested with terrible items. Not to mention you get these cool glowing holy chests, which are basically just a key sink, which yeah, that's fun design. Basically work really hard to be a perfectionist and not take any damage to the red hearts, to even have a chance at a deal, and then suddenly get screwed over because, oh, guess you just got bad RNG, buddy. And this is not to mention the fact that sometimes, in greed mode, only mind you, they will occasionally not give you a deal or even some hearts, they'll just give you runes. And to add insult to injury, mind you, most runes are balanced around the base game and not greed mode. So you can get a full map mapping rune and that will basically do nothing. Or a rune that removes curses and basically do nothing. Secret rooms are pure RNG and basically aren't even worth it at all. And the sacrifice room, not worth it, period. Health is extremely limited in this mode, and you basically very rarely get anything good. And this is not to mention Ultra Greed himself. He's kind of okay-ish, at least in his first phase. I honestly think if you remove boss armor and you basically took away one big thing, that being the fact he can heal himself with the coin hearts that he summons, I think that these could basically be really easy fixes that basically would make his boss fight so much better. The problem is just the fact that he suffers from many of the same problems that Dell computers and Hush have. But even more so, you're at the mercy of RNG of whatever the shops and the item rooms give you. And then there's the hard mode version, Greedier, which is even worse because you get even less coins and I'm just gonna say it, they did not test this, and it's basically get perfect RNG or get fucked, idiot. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it, that's basically the game mode in a nutshell. Frankly, improved greed mode. You need it. Get it. Don't care what you think. Download it right now. It's so much better than greed mode, and honestly, it is a wonder that more people do not download this mod. I think it is up there with the item descriptions mod. It fundamentally just completely and utterly makes everything wrong with greed mode so much better. And it's actually fun. You're given a proper amount of items, you can get really strong, but also, Ultra Greedier is still a pain in the ass boss to deal with, so it's fine. Everything got overhauled. And look, donation machine in the fucking shop so you don't have to waste your time grinding. Seriously, this mod is great. Well, with that, that's everything. That's everything I want to talk about. And to answer my own question, the answer is no, Afterbirth is not a good DLC. Which is honestly just kind of a tragedy in its own right, because Afterbirth definitely did have a lot of good things that I did enjoy. It had a lot of interesting things that ultimately did make the base game a lot better, and it ultimately had a lot of things that I did ultimately think had potential. But there's just so many problems with it that I ultimately think that it's just not worth it. And had it not been for Repentance basically just completely and overly ripping out so many different things and overhauling it, I think Afterbirth could have easily killed the Binding of Isaac if it had not been for Repentance basically redeeming Isaac as a whole. And maybe someday I'll cover Repentance. Well, I plan to at some point, but don't count on it anytime soon. Well, with that, that's all for now. And if you enjoyed this video, well, thank you. And if you didn't enjoy this video, well, thank you for making it this far. I don't have much else to say. Anyways, I'm gonna go work on something else because this whole thing was taking a lot longer than I initially expected, and it's kind of driving me insane. So, yeah, goodbye. Have a nice day, or something. You know what? Have a nice day. You know what? You should have the greatest day ever, because I had to torture myself and you watched me go through that torture of dealing with this shit. Have a fantastic day, and goodbye.